We have a black male. We do not know any more about that, including the cause of death.
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're looking at infamous cases of investigative errors made by law enforcement that yielded serious consequences.
That information was under wraps until San Francisco Mayor Dianne Feinstein held a news conference and revealed every detail.
Centennial Olympic Park incident. Security guard Richard Jewell was initially praised for discovering a bag full of pipe bombs and helping to evacuate Atlanta's Centennial Olympic Park in 1996.
Jewell, a former sheriff's deputy, had discovered the bomb in a backpack and helped clear the area before the explosion. He was hailed a hero.
His presence and profile nonetheless made him a person of interest in the bomb's planting. After pressure on the FBI led to this information being leaked to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the public turned on Jewell.
I remember saying to my editor, this man's life will never be the same, simply because he suddenly was in the eye of this media storm.
He was eventually cleared with no other suspects until anti-government terrorist Eric Rudolph was captured after 2 more bombings in '98. This trial by media would become a cautionary tale in the potential human cost of law enforcement and the public rushing to judgment.
For 88 days, I lived a nightmare. For 88 days, my mother lived a nightmare too. And it's rushed for the headline that the hero was the bomber. The media cared nothing for my feelings as a human being.
10 years after the bombing, the state of Georgia formally declared Jewell a hero. The West Memphis Three. Cases like the Central Park Five show the tragedy of bringing prejudice into an investigation.
When I first saw those tapes, I didn't disbelieve them. Like anybody else, when I watch a confession tape, my first impulse is, whoa, an innocent person really wouldn't do that.
But at least Matias Reyes eventually confessed to the assault pinned on those teenagers. There would be no justice for 3 children who were gruesomely murdered in West Memphis, Arkansas in 1993. The investigation suffered from poor crime scene handling, cursory examinations, and information leaks. Speculation of a satanic ritual caused authorities to lean on teenage outsiders Jason Baldwin, Damian Eccles, and Jesse Miskelly Jr.
They argue that the boys' predilections, along with the strange and brutal nature of the crime scene, are proof that the murders were committed as a satanic ritual.
A coerced confession sealed their fate, but overwhelming evidence suggested that the public was desperate for closure and that the police were unwilling to face their mistakes. Baldwin, Eccles, and Miskelly were released from prison in 2011, but the real killers were never caught.
Today, the West Memphis Three walked free.
It's been an absolute living hell.
Disappearance of Madeleine McCann. A 2007 holiday in Lagos turned tragic for British couple Kate and Jerry McCann, who reported their 3-year-old daughter Madeleine's disappearance on May 3rd.
3 years ago, in a small town on the Algarve coast in Portugal, an extraordinary chain of events was triggered.
But Portuguese authorities failed to immediately secure the scene and notify Interpol. The McCanns would later learn that police suspected them of staging the abduction themselves.
Please, if you have Madeleine, let her come home to her mummy, daddy, brother and sister.
In the years following their exoneration, leads based on limited evidence and mistaken witness statements have consistently fallen through. In 2023, Portuguese police finally apologized to the McCanns for their poor initial response and communication with tourists in a particularly high-pressure situation. Law enforcement in multiple countries are still trying to find out what happened to Madeleine.
I think we will always wonder what happened to her.
Murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. The 1994 killings of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman set up one of the most shocking trials in modern American history.
This was the perfect soap opera. The O.J. Simpson murder case was the first true reality show for the country.
Okay, let's go, here we go.
This was the first wall-to-wall televised trial.
The investigation was immediately hampered by first responders' disoriented handling of an unsecured crime scene. Public pressure certainly became overwhelming as police charged Brown's superstar ex-husband, O.J. Simpson.
The battle lines are drawn, and race will now determine this trial's outcome.
The evidence was essentially conclusive. But the defendant's team effectively argued that sloppy police work and Detective Mark Furman's conduct opened the possibility of corruption. Simpson's acquittal is widely believed to be a miscarriage of justice, influenced by LA's contemporary racial tensions. But the argument for jury bias would have been stronger, if not for the failings of a seemingly open-shut investigation.
Was that verdict about murder or was it about race?
The verdict was undeniably about race.
Murder of JonBenet Ramsey. The day after Christmas, 1996, child model JonBenet Ramsey was found dead in the basement of her affluent family's Colorado home.
A story that is gripping the nation. It is the investigation of the murder of little JonBenet Ramsey.
Media attention on this shocking tragedy escalated as Boulder PD focused their investigation on a cover-up by the family. But the case was found to be compromised by a failure to immediately interview them and to secure the scene from visitors who contaminated the scene.
Boulder police believe John and Patsy killed their daughter and then staged a kidnapping, complete with a rambling 2.5-page ransom note to cover it up.
Crucial evidence was either lost or shared with the suspected family, and the investigators' tunnel vision was ultimately undermined by false confessions and clashes with the district attorney's office. With the Ramseys cleared by ambiguous DNA evidence in 2008, the circumstances of JonBenet's death may be too muddied for the case to ever be reliably closed.
Finding the killer isn't going to change my life at this point, but it will change the lives of my children and my grandchildren. This cloud needs to be removed from our family's head and this chapter closed for their benefit. So there is an answer.
Evans family tragedy. London police knew that there was no time to waste after Beryl Evans and her daughter Geraldine were murdered in 1949.
The murder of Beryl was just the beginning of the tragic tale of Timothy Evans.
They observed the violent history of the victim's patriarch, Timothy, and got him to confess to possibly poisoning his wife to terminate an unwanted pregnancy.
Stricken with guilt, on November the 30th, he went to the police station in Merthyr Tydfil and confessed that he had disposed of his wife.
But he changed his story even before learning that the victims were strangled. Evans was nonetheless convicted and later executed on the eyewitness testimony of neighbor John Christie. 3 years later, Christie confessed to murdering Beryl, as well as 4 women after them. This miscarriage of justice was a key factor in the abolition of the death penalty in the UK, but could have been avoided if the police were less prejudiced and more scrupulous.
But on the 9th of March 1950, not only had one man been wrongfully executed, the real killer had got away scot-free. His terrible crimes were yet to be discovered.
The Night Stalker. In 1985, Los Angeles was gripped in fear of the serial killer known as the Night Stalker.
The Night Stalker killed at least 13 times, 13 people who were awakened in the night to face death. At least 15 others survived his brutal attacks.
San Francisco Mayor Dianne Feinstein was hoping to comfort the public with a press conference to address him striking in their city. But the broadcast inadvertently notified the killer that police were aware of his gun and rare Avius sneakers.
As a result, Richard got rid of the shoes and got rid of a gun over the Golden Gate Bridge.
This information was meant to be held from the public, but the scope of the manhunt stained communication among law enforcement agencies. Richard Ramirez threw his shoes off the Golden Gate Bridge, but was thankfully not able to kill again before he was apprehended by civilians who recognized his description. Law enforcement officials would credit them with resolving one of the largest manhunts in California history.
Days after Romero's tip, police found Ramirez's car, lifted a print, ID'd him, and then, a few days after that, he was arrested in East Los Angeles, nearly killed by an angry mob.
The Unabomber. The highly intelligent eco-terrorist Ted Kaczynski evaded capture for 17 years.
He was the most wanted man in America, a cold-blooded bomber who killed and maimed. He eluded the FBI for 18 years, a ghost targeting universities and airlines. Thus the name, the Unabomber.
In that time, he delivered 16 bombs by various methods, leading police to treat some of the attacks as isolated incidents. It was even theorized that there were multiple bombers. But authorities weren't just actively outwitted by the Unabomber, named for his initial targeting of universities and airlines.
Local, state, and federal investigators continue to work around the clock, collecting evidence from the blast.
The early morning explosion severely injured Yale University computer scientist David Glerntner.
The Unabomber task force thus focused on college-age suspects until the materials of the bombs shifted the profile to an older blue-collar man. An academic aged somewhere in between, Kaczynski was finally arrested in 1996 after his brother David recognized the mannerisms in his published manifesto. Even when the big picture is so far off, the finer points in an investigation are crucial.
The press coverage of Kaczynski's capture was amplified by the fact that the national media was already in the state.
The Yorkshire Ripper. A year after Peter Sutcliffe's arrest, Constabulary Inspector Lawrence Byford wrote a report about how the Yorkshire Ripper could have been caught much sooner.
The whole of Britain was terrified by the elusive murderer who seemed to kill for his own enjoyment.
Sutcliffe was interviewed 9 times during his 5-year spree, yet police didn't note small descriptions of the suspect that he matched. They even downplayed his implication in an anonymous letter that a friend quickly took credit for.
And even Peter Sutcliffe himself has said, I got to the point where I thought I must be invisible. So he got to a stage where he felt untouchable. He felt so powerful, he thought that he was never going to get caught.
But long before the Home Office released the Byford Report in 2006, everyone knew about Wareside Jack. John Samuel Humble's false tapes and letters misdirected the investigation for over a year. Sutcliffe ultimately admitted to being the Ripper during his 1981 interview, putting an end to one of the most infamously flawed major investigations in UK history.
Sutcliffe's legacy casts a deathly shadow over the lives he took and the lives he left behind.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Atlanta murders. The murders of 2 adults and 28 children were linked to a spree in Atlanta between 1979 and 81.
The city was on fire with fear.
But police didn't seriously investigate the links until a year in. It's understood that racial bias impeded efforts to solve these crimes within the city's black community. Even after a task force was formed, it took civilian pressure to spark federal involvement. Wayne Williams was ultimately convicted of killing the 2 adults, then linked to most of the child abductions.
It took 11.5 hours, over 2 days, for the 9 women and 3 men, 8 black and 4 white jurors, to reach a verdict for the murders of Nathaniel Cater and Jimmy Ray Payne. Guilty on both counts. The sentence, 2 consecutive life terms.
The string ended with his downfall, though many feel he was a scapegoat for a possible conspiracy or social crisis. Williams himself has tried to appeal his case on the grounds that the police cared more about catching the Atlanta boogeyman than looking deeper.
To this day, Williams still proclaims his innocence.
I'm just speaking from the heart. I haven't killed anybody.
What are some other miscarriages of justice brought on by flimsy investigating? Testify in the comments below.